Hello, in this video I'm going to explain how we can piece together several shots taken at the same time in order to come up with a stronger image, and this involves key Photoshop skills of layer masking and selecting. So I'm going to bring up my layers panel here, and you'll see here that this image is actually a composite of several different images. If I go back to the original image here, and you can see I've added these different splashes and drops around the image to come up with the finished result. So I'm going to show you how this is done. I'm going to go into Bridge here, and these are the starting images that I've used. So this is the main image here, and I really like this one of the dog, but I felt that it didn't have enough droplets and splashes for my liking. So I had these other shots taken at the same time that weren't quite right. Some of them were out of focus, or just the dog wasn't quite right in them, but I could use the various drops and splashes from these shots and add them into my main image. So to do this, I'm going to open them all up into Photoshop, and this is my main image here. So I'll bring this one up, and then I'm going to go to this image here, and in this image I quite like these splashes down at the bottom here. So I'm going to bring up my tools panel over here, and I'm going to grab the lasso tool from the tools panel, and I'm just going to make a really rough selection of this area here. So I don't need to be too precise with my selecting here. I'm just going to go around these splashes and details like this. And once I've made a selection of that area, I can grab the move tool, and I'm just going to click and drag that selected area up to the tab of my main image here, which is the dog before 2 image, this one here, and then I'm going to drop it on top like this, and you can see how I'm able to move this little piece around, and see in the layers panel over here how that area appears on a separate layer above the background layer. Now I need to blend this with the rest of my image, and to do this I'm going to use a blend mode. If I go to the layers panel here, you can see at the moment the blend mode is set to normal, but I can change this to lighten, and you can see how now only the lighter pixels are showing through. So effectively I'm able to create this sort of splash effect on its own separate layer here, and I can move it around and position it where I like, and because only the lighter pixels are showing through, it's only really showing me the highlights in the drops there. Now, if I want those drops to come out slightly stronger, I can always make a tonal adjustment to this layer by using, perhaps I can use curves. So I can hit Command or Control and M to bring up my curves dialog box here, and then I can just make the curve line slightly higher like this. You can see how that lifts the droplets there. You can see if I push too far, then the background starts to interfere with the dog, so I might want to just make sure I'm really knocking out the darker pixels there by dragging a second point on my curve line down here like this. So I'll bring my line to about there, and I'm happy with that, so I'll hit OK to apply, and that just makes my droplets slightly stronger. So I'm going to position these droplets around about here, and then let's go and grab some more. So I'm going to go to this image now. There's lots of drops around here we can use. So again, I'll use the lasso tool. I'll make a selection of the area that I want to use, and then I'm going to again use the move tool to drag that area into my main image. And again, I'll use the lighten blend mode over here. So you can see how that's working. If we zoom out a little bit, I might want to just resize the image, so I can click on the bounding box. If you're not seeing the bounding box, then you need to go up to the Show Transform Controls option here in the Move Tool options at the top of the screen, and that gives us our bounding box that we can just click on to resize and position our layer. So I'll make it slightly larger like this and bring it to around about here, I think, like this, and then I'll hit enter to apply. And you can see with this layer here, we're getting these nasty hard edges. So what I can do is mask those out using a layer mask. So I'll click the Add Layer Mask icon here at the bottom of the Layers panel, and let's zoom in a little bit closer to those areas as well. Then I can use the brush tool. So I'll grab the brush tool from the toolbar over here. I can hit D and then X, which sets my foreground color down here to black. And then all I need to do is paint over the image while that mask thumbnail there is highlighted to hide parts of the layer. So you can see I can change the brush opacity up here. I'm going to bring that up to 100 and then just paint over the layer like this. And because I'm using a really soft brush tip, then I get this nice transition between the droplets and the dog. So I'll do the same down here. You can see I'm able to create a softer transition there, and that just helps everything to blend together quite nicely. Again, I'll toggle that off and on, and I might use a curves adjustment again. So I'll hit Command or Control and then making sure the image part of the layer here is highlighted, and then again I can add a bit of punch and contrast to those droplets just to make them stand out even more, and I'll hit OK to apply. And then let's go to this image here, and I'm going to use the droplets from this one as well in the same way. So I'll make a rough selection of the area using the lasso tool. Again, drag it in using the move tool. Position it on top. Let's bring it down here this time. And again, let's go for the light and blend mode and use curves again to just make the droplets slightly stronger. So you can see how this works. And of course, we can just reuse the same layers here. So if I want to make a quick copy of this layer, I can just hold Alt and drag it. And you can see how that allows me to duplicate the layer and build up the drops. So I'm going to bring another layer up over here. And you can see how I'm able to really quickly duplicate these layers and reuse them in different ways around my image. So I could also perhaps duplicate this splash over here, and I'll bring it across to this side of the frame here, perhaps rotate it just to make it look slightly different from the other splash, and position it around about here like this. And perhaps I'll duplicate one more time and drag up to the top here. So once we've got a decent coverage of splashes here, what I'm going to do next is add a tonal effect on top of everything. So I'll highlight the top layer here, then I'll use the keyboard shortcut Command or Control plus Shift Alt and E. That's Command on a Mac, Control on a PC, plus Shift Alt and E, and that will merge all of the layers into a single layer there at the top of the layer stack. And then I'm going to take this layer into the Camera Raw filter for some final tonal effects. So I'm going to go to Filter, Camera Raw Filter, and I could perhaps just tweak the temperature to cool the image down slightly. Let's perhaps up the clarity a little bit, which will really bring out those droplets, and perhaps add a touch of dehaze as well. Let's also maybe increase the texture very slightly. Let's add a bit more contrast, maybe increase the vibrance slightly. This is all just about finishing off the image and adding a few tonal tweaks. We could even go to the profile browser here and choose one of these different profiles. Let's go for this Modern 4 profile here. I'll just drop the amount down slightly, and I'm happy with that, so I'll hit OK to apply. And if I toggle that top layer there off and on, you can see how those tonal tweaks just help to finish off my image. So there we go. That's how to combine several images from a shoot to come up with a stronger result.